In this Kundalini Q&A segment, we're taking a deep dive into the topic of drugs and Kundalini. We'll explore a little bit about psychedelics, magic mushrooms. We'll talk a little bit about the history of things like yoga and the relationship between, plant medicine, hallucinogens, and, psychedelics and things like that around the world. And I'll share a little bit about my experience, my personal interest in these matters. We'll talk a little bit about doubting your own experience, whether you had a Kundalini awakening or any kind of spiritual awakening that involved drugs or psychedelics. We'll talk a little bit about, like I said, the doubts, maybe other people doubting you and how to manage these things. We'll go deep into this topic. I got this question from Chantilly Lace on Instagram. So one of the best places to reach me right now, Instagram @BrentSpirit. You can also reach me by email info@brentspirit.com if you have a question about your spiritual awakening or Kundalini awakening process. So this question from Chantilly Lace says, is a drug-induced Kundalini awakening as credible as one that isn't? So before we get into that, I just want to invite you to check out brentspirit.com for more free content. I've got some courses coming out that are going to dive deep into topics like how to integrate Kundalini awakening into your life, how to embody it, how to ground that energy. Maybe you had an experience through psychedelics and, you're all over the place now. A lot of energy was activated within you and you want to learn how to embody that. Well, this course that I'm putting out is going to cover this. Also got a course coming out on Kundalini awakening itself. We're going to go deep in a very structured way. All new content, so you can look out for that. Links will be in the description once it's out. So let's dive right into this now. So Chantilly Lace, like I said, she asks, is a drug-induced Kundalini awakening as credible as one that isn't? Of course it is. Of course it is as credible as one that isn't. Any type of Kundalini awakening, no matter the context, circumstances, it is credible. Whether you were on drugs, whether it was in a dream, whether it was, God knows whether it was through Shakti, encountering another person with awakened Kundalini, all credible, all valid, all should be treated in the same way, which is with respect, curiosity, surrender, willingness to work with the process. So even though it was on drugs, it was by no means, if your awakening happened on drugs, it was by no means just a fleeting, hallucination that has no implications on the rest of your life moving forward, like quite literally the rest of your life. The next days, weeks, months, years, decades of your life will all be impacted by the awakening, no matter how it happened, even if it happened, in some sort of psychedelic drug-induced experience. So we'll explore this a little bit. So, if we go back in history, psychedelics, plant medicine have always been a part of spiritual exploration, mystical journeying, the journey of self-discovery, transcendentalism, whatever you want to call it. And around the world, there's been, people that have approached spirituality with the use of using nature to support it. And oftentimes it involved ingesting, plants from nature, right? To have these expansive states of consciousness come online, these expansive mystical experiences, to be able to tune in and work with the energy in very direct, almost like surgical ways, to see the different chakras and the nadis, to have incredible clarity, to support people in meditation, to heal and feel connected and feel oneness. All of these plants, drugs, psychedelics, whatever you want to call it, hallucinogens, they were always a part of some sort of, the roots of spiritual exploration. And so the people that were using them back then, in conjunction with their sadhana, in conjunction with their spiritual practice, whether it was, meditation or shamanism or yoga or whatever it was, really some form of devotion to a higher power, these are the roots of most paths. And, so of course, if you have an awakening today that involves psychedelics or drugs or plant medicine, of course it's credible. Absolutely. Of course. Because if you look into the history, like I'm saying, of most of the original teachings and the original traditions, you'll find somewhere or another there were some psychedelics involved, or the people that kind of founded the original paths, had some encounters with the teachings, so with the teachings of the plants, and then began to share it with other people. So if we look to India, if we look to some of the very old Vedic texts, they speak of a substance which they describe as Soma, right? And it's a little unclear about what exactly Soma is, what plant it would be, or what substance it would be, but it's very clear that, it's a psychedelic substance. It's a drug. It's, some sort of plant medicine, probably a mushroom, right? And they talk about, consuming this in conjunction with, engaging some sort of spiritual practice in a ritualistic manner, and having, mystical experiences, self-realization, experiencing oneness with God, yoga, that sort of thing. And this is a very complicated, deep, mysterious thing, and I don't know too much about it, but I do know that it's very obvious. A lot of yoga has its roots in some plant medicine for sure, right? And so we see the throughout history, the cow or sacred animals that we see today that are very sacred and revered, like in Hinduism, the cow. It's because without cows, there's no mushrooms. It's one way of looking at it. It's just a perspective. I know this can be argued, and you can argue till the cows come home, you could say. But without cows, there's no cow dung, which is the material on which these mushrooms would grow. And I think it's very interesting that you've got to humble yourself to eat a mushroom that grew on a turd, if you really want to, know God in this way. It's not the only way of knowing God through psychedelics. Of course not. You don't need to. Most people don't, in fact. But, it's interesting to see the connections here. Even in Christianity, there is some pretty strong, interesting arguments that, the whole tradition was based around, it was like a mushroom cult, you could say. There's symbols of the body of Christ. It's symbolic of consuming something to experience union with God, communion, holy communion. You eat this bread that has been blessed, and then you're supposed to, symbolically or metaphorically or spiritually experience communion with God. And that's why within the church, the Catholic Church, it's so sacred to have this body of Christ, right? Which is just it's quote unquote just a wafer, right? It's a wafer that's been blessed. But what does that symbolize? What does that look like, right? It looks like somebody consuming a psychoactive substance with the intention of experiencing union with the divine. Now, what does Kundalini do? It takes you through the process towards experiencing union with the divine, right? So we see it there again in Christianity. It's there in Hinduism at its roots, you could say. Of course, this can all be argued. Some may say I'm speaking blasphemy here, and that's fine. It's fine. They likely have never, eaten a mushroom, had a genuine lived experience of God, and that's okay. No problem. Not everybody has to. It's not for everybody. It's pretty intense, powerful stuff that should be treated with great respect and reverence. Not just like something casual. But anyway, there's a book here. I actually haven't read it, so maybe I shouldn't be talking about it, but I think some might find interest in it. It's called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by John M. Allegro. You can see the graphic there is a series of mushrooms, and around it there is the snake, right? Of course, that is symbolic of Kundalini. And John puts together an argument here that, Christianity was, like I said, it was probably had a lot to do with mushrooms. Now, of course, you could say, I'm sure some of this can be debunked and disproven and blah, 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 but whatever. But it's just an interesting, thing to consider, right? On the back of the book here, there's an interesting line. It says, "To the mystic, it was the divinely given means of entering heaven. God had come down in the flesh to show the way to himself by himself." And this divinely given means was, of course, the mushroom. So something interesting to consider. Of course, shamans, this is how they work, right? Not all shamans per se. And shaman is a pretty broad topic, but there's a very, serious shaman, there's some very serious shamanistic rituals and practices that involve plant medicine, that involve working with the energies within the body, which some may call Kundalini. Of course, a shaman isn't necessarily going to use the word Kundalini because that's comes out of yoga. Maybe there's a shaman that's, from South America per se, so they'll have different words and different language, but they use these drugs for spiritual exploration, and it's all in line with what, the Kundalini process is about. So, we've got ayahuasca. A lot of people describe, experiencing Kundalini phenomena or Kundalini awakening on ayahuasca, right? It's a drug. It's plant medicine. Ayahuasca comes from the jungle. I think there's very strong themes about ayahuasca being like very feminine in essence. Of course, that is synonymous with Kundalini. If we look at some of the great spiritual teachers of our time, most notable, we could say Ram Dass. Here's Ram Dass. He's, very, you could say, somewhat well put together Jewish Harvard professor. Back in, I think, the 50s or 60s, they come across psilocybin, magic mushrooms. And this is before anybody really knew much about this, except the people that were working with it, like in the jungle and whatnot, and of course, the yogis and whatnot. But the mainstream had no idea about this, so it wasn't illegal per se. And so, Ram Dass ingests some mushrooms, right? He's a psychology professor. He's interested in these things, and he starts having these like ego death experiences, a total dissolution. He's having spiritual experiences, and they changed his life, right? And you wouldn't be able to say, oh, that was his drugs. Back then, I think his name was Rupert. You wouldn't say, oh, that was just drugs, buddy. It doesn't mean anything. No, like this changed his life. And he's a Harvard psychology professor that realized he doesn't know what the hell is going on anymore. It was that significant for him. Then, of course, they began to explore LSD, and eventually he finds his way over to India, and he meets his guru. He gives Neem Karoli Baba, who of course is, he's an avatar, he's a great saint. He's, gone through Kundalini awakening, or, came in this life with already awakened Kundalini, however you want to talk about it. He gives Neem Karoli Baba like a dose of acid, right? Psychedelic, a very powerful psychedelic. He gives him like a dose that would, put a lot of people out. Like it's very, very powerful dose, and, for multiple people. And Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji takes this and quite literally nothing happens to him. He's just so, so conscious that, it doesn't have any effect on him. And he tells Ram Dass, tells him, oh, yogis have known about this medicine for a long time. We've known about this. You've just discovered it. You come from the West, you just discovered it. We've known about this. Yeah, no big deal. But they've known about this medicine, right? These types of psychedelics, right? Of course, Ram Dass went on to have a Kundalini awakening himself. Whether it happened to him specifically during a mushroom trip or not, I can't say. During an acid trip or not, I can't say. But what we can say is that his spiritual journey was, sparked by psychedelics. And to me, and this is an idea I'm still playing with a little bit, I haven't really been able to articulate it well, but basically the entire spiritual journey is Kundalini awakening. So the moment he began, that was a Kundalini process. Same with me, my spiritual awakening journey, I sat in meditation, I looked inwards immediately. From the first time I sat and looked inwards, my spine began to, move around, and I had these kriyas and I didn't know what was happening, but that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening journey and Kundalini awakening. I don't think the two are separate. I don't think that there is a spiritual awakening without Kundalini. So just to clarify that. I know I'm all over the place here. I'm just kind of throwing stuff out, just talking in the flow here. So throughout my journey, plant medicine has been a very meaningful part of it. Not in the past many years, but Kundalini awakening for me, like the moment of Kundalini rising for me, took place during a mushroom trip, and it was very intense, but very incredible. And following the experience, there was a lot of difficulty, turbulence, energetic instability, fallout, you could say, a lot of being energetically ungrounded. And I attribute that to, the awakening happening to me during a psychedelic trip. Now, that doesn't mean that, this just happened to me out of nowhere. I was doing a lot of intense sadhana leading up to this, a lot of intense sober meditation, a lot of intense study of different texts, contemplation and inquiry, very, very dedicated to my spiritual path. And that set me up, to have this incredible experience on the mushrooms. And so, I have an incredible reverence and respect and gratitude and appreciation for these great gifts from the earth. But with that said, I'm not like one of those people. I'm not a shaman. I'm not a people that facilitates, trips per se. I actually don't recommend that people use plant medicine to, awaken Kundalini. I think there are far better, safer, smoother methods, such as simple meditation, devotion, loving kindness, surrender, doing some shadow work, I think all of those are very, very sustainable ways to go through Kundalini awakening that won't be so debilitating for some, because my process, once it awakened, it was like so intense, so intense after that for a little while. And I've seen this with many people. They approach plant medicine, psychedelics with the intention of having some spiritual exploration or not. And energetically, they just become very ungrounded, experiencing things like mania and psychosis, depersonalization, incredible anxiety. Then on top of that, they think, okay, I did, some drugs. So like, was I just making all of this up? Am I gone crazy? Did the drugs ruin my brain, et cetera, et cetera? And so a lot of doubt can arise if you have spiritual experiences on psychedelics, because, it's very easy to dismiss it by saying, this was just a hallucination. So if this happens to be, the type of experience that you're having, you had an awakening on psychedelics and you're like, maybe I was just tripping out. Well, I invite you to consider, what are the implications of that awakening in your sober life, in the years, months, weeks, days that follow. Are you going through a purification process, which is very typical of those who go through Kundalini awakening, whether there was drugs involved or not? Do you feel like you're, having an open heart? Are you experiencing other signs or so-called symptoms of what we call Kundalini awakening? If so, well, then you could probably, say, with confidence that you're in a Kundalini awakening that's credible. This was your words here, Chantilly Lace. You asked, is a drug-induced Kundalini awakening as credible as one that isn't? Well, you can find ways to make it credible by looking at what your experience is. Forget about, the trip you had. Now, in the weeks, months that follow, what's your experience? Are you having all the signs and symptoms of a typical Kundalini awakening? Maybe you can, just turn inwards and see. Maybe you'll get some guidance. Maybe your Kundalini is online and it will, respond to you if you check in with it. So just because it's happened on plant medicine doesn't mean it's not credible. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. Like I said, some of the most original mystics were all tripping on this stuff, because back then there wasn't all this, all this stuff about legalization and all this, the war on drugs and all that kind of stuff. People were free and just exploring these things. And of course, if you take these mushrooms, you have an incredible experience. You feel incredible love, bliss. Of course, everyone's gonna want to explore them and figure them out. And that's why people were able to become very astute at understanding them. Today, a lot of this knowledge has been lost because we've shut ourselves off, with the war on drugs and whatnot in the 70s and 60s and whatever. But things are coming back online. A lot of people are turning to the wisdom of these plants, and there's a lot of studies coming out that are showing these are powerful things that have potential to heal. Some places, I think there maybe are some healing sessions being facilitated by professionals, licensed professionals, and this is like really great things that are happening here. And I think it coincides with the ascension that's happening on the planet. I think it coincides with this acceleration that we're seeing more and more people awakening, and it will also help us to understand a little bit more about the power of these plants, so that we can help people that maybe had an awakening. Maybe they were just partying and suddenly they're having an awakening and their whole life is turned upside down, and not a lot of people are able to really help them and understand what they're going through. They don't really understand the connection between plant medicine and spiritual awakening and how to bridge the gap and integrate it, or even more specifically, plant medicine and Kundalini, right? So like I said, I'm putting together a course, not specifically about plant medicine and drugs and whatnot, but about grounding and embodiment. And this course will have all the material to help you to learn how to bring your awakening into the body if it happened in a way that's really destabilized you energetically. And for the most part, most people that have awakenings on psychedelics, they're very, very energetically destabilized. So this course is going to dive deep into this, and it's a topic that, like I said, I've got some great, I've had some incredible experiences, and it's very, very meaningful for me, because, all of the things I'll be sharing in that course, I've lived and I've, learned through talking to other people that were living it as well. So, other people as well, they may doubt your experience. You may say I had a Kundalini awakening. It was on magic mushrooms or on LSD or on weed or something. And they may say, yeah, right, that was just a hallucination. And that might bother you because, you've got this very easy way for people to dismiss you, right? Because you were on drugs, right? They'll say, "Hi, buddy, you were on drugs." Like, shut up. You're just making this up. Like, you were hallucinating. And you're like, yeah, but that was, last year, and I'm still experiencing this phenomena, this awakening experience is still ongoing. and they will say, they'll just shut you out, right? And I understand, I mean, this is kind of awakening that I had, so I know exactly what you mean. What I would say to people in this position is, hey, look, even if you had an awakening in meditation, sober, these people would probably still doubt you anyway. You probably wouldn't be able to convince them anyway. They would find something else to, make you feel invalidated. And I've got a whole talk on this. It's called Talking About Kundalini with Friends and Family. And it's mainly because, if you don't have this experience yourself, it's very difficult for a person to accept it, acknowledge it, take it in, let it, to validate another person, and that makes sense, right? This is so far out, we're talking about snake energy and Kundalini awakening. It's just so far out and ridiculous, right? So we can't expect people to believe us, let alone, validate us, especially if it happened on drugs. We just got to accept that it's a very personal, sacred, and private affair, you could say, and other people don't necessarily need to support us per se. Okay, I know it's not easy to hear, but it's what I've learned. I've tried to convince people that weren't experiencing this themselves about all this. It doesn't always work out, and usually does not. If there are people in your life that believe you, great, cherish them, celebrate them. You're very lucky, because many people do not have people like that in their lives. So, I hope that answers your question here. Is a drug-induced Kundalini awakening as credible as one that isn't? Of course it is. Of course it is. This is my type of awakening. And, I'm here doing this work, stable, feeling confident. I wish the same for you, no matter where you are on your journey, no matter how your awakening took place, whether it was through breathwork, meditation, in a dream, even if it happened in a dream, just as credible, okay? Keep all of this in mind. Don't let people talk you out of your direct personal experience. They don't have that much power unless you give to them. So I hope this has been a meaningful response. Like I said, I know it's a little all over the place, but fun topic. Maybe in the future I'll dive more into it. But for now, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for the questions, Chantilly Lace. If you got a question for me, you can reach me on Instagram @BrentSpirit, info@BrentSpirit.com via email. Like I said, courses coming out, free content, ebooks, audiobooks, videos, blogs, more stuff all about Kundalini on my website, BrentSpirit.com. If you'd like to learn how to meet with me one-on-one, if this is meaningful work for you and you'd like to make a donation, it's also appreciated, and you can find more at BrentSpirit.com. Until next time, much love and peace.